Hello, everyone, and welcome into the 26th episode of Jack's Mailbag, the series where I answer your Gamecock athletics questions. If you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop it in the comments section below on this YouTube video, or I'll have a post on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com where you can ask any and all of your questions that you may have for me. This week, we're obviously going to be talking a lot about previewing South Carolina's upcoming matchup with number 16 LSU tomorrow at Williams-Brice Stadium. Should be a great game. Noon kickoff, ABC, college game day is going to be in town for the first time in 10 years. And I'm really still on the fence about how this game's going to go for the Gamecocks, but I definitely do think they have a really good chance to pull off another upset here. But without further ado, let's get into our questions this week, starting out with Washington Cock, who's got 4 questions for me. So the first one is, will Nick Harbor catch a long touchdown pass this season? He hasn't really gotten involved in this offense at all, and I just think that's personally because there are better receivers on this team, and that's not a knock on Nick. I think he's a great athlete, great guy, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he didn't come out of high school as a 5-star wide receiver. He came out of high school as a 5-star athlete, and he played defensive end, and I believe tight end in high school. So because of that, it's taking some time for, I think, receiver to translate over to the college level because it's a completely different game. That said, he has great speed. He's a big guy. I don't really know why they haven't run like a go route with him yet or something. Or I don't even know. I know people suggest jet sweeps as well. However, I do think at some point South Carolina's gonna figure it out with him, and I do think they're gonna get him involved in this offense. I don't know if it'll be like a long touchdown pass, but I do think he scores at least a touchdown this year. So my prediction, I guess, to answer the question, I'm gonna say no, but I do think he'll get involved in this offense soon enough. It's kind of crazy that it hasn't worked out yet, and you just wonder when it will, or if it ever will, to be honest. And then the next question from Washington Cock is, will our Gamecocks go bowling this season? I will say yes. They're on the right track right now. At the time of recording this on Friday morning, this will be posted later today on Friday. They're 2-0, and they got a chance to go 3-0 against LSU this weekend. If they go 3-0 this week, they're going to go 4-0 because they're going to beat Akron next week. And then you go into the bye week. So if you're 4-0 through 1 month, I know October is really tough because you're at home against Ole Miss, then you go to Bama, and then you go to Oklahoma. If you could win maybe one game in October and you're either at 4 or 5 wins, then I feel like, okay, November, let's see, you're going to beat Wofford. So that's either getting you to 6 or 5 wins. And then you're probably going to beat one of A&M, Vanderbilt, or Missouri. And then you got Clemson at the end of the year. So there's a real potential for them to get to, and honestly, my overall predictions, I said 8-4 for South Carolina. I still feel pretty good about that right now, despite how tough the schedule gets after this month. But I do feel like South Carolina so far has done what they've needed to do. They pulled off. I guess you can call it an upset, even though I feel like South Carolina's just better than Kentucky. They went into Lexington and took care of business in a game that was kind of a toss-up. And then this week with LSU, if they win this game, it's like, okay, they're 3-0. They're going to go 4-0 next week, presumably. If you lose to Akron, we have bigger problems here. But you're going to be 4-0 in the first month of the season, which is rare for this team. I mean, it hasn't happened since 2012. So I do feel like if you get these 4 wins, or 3 wins, honestly, if you're 3-1 at the end of the month, you're halfway to 6 wins. I think you should be able to get it. But again, it's going to be tough because you do have to probably pull off another upset somewhere along the line because Vanderbilt's no slouch right now. I mean, they're 2-0 right now. I mean, they get Georgia State this weekend, I think. I mean, they could be 3-0 right now when this video is up and recorded. I mean, who knows? But I do think South Carolina can get the 6 wins. They just need to take care of business against some teams that maybe they're not favored against. But don't count out this team just yet. I think they're off to a good start, and I think it's going to continue. Next question from Washington Cox says, will our baseball team get to a regional? Absolutely. If South Carolina doesn't get to a regional in 2025, this whole pulmonary thing is a massive failure, at least to me. Like, you should be making the postseason in year one. And it's not just because, you got a legendary head coach in there. You have a great roster. Like, I honestly think without seeing them all play together, on paper, this is an Omaha caliber roster. in my opinion. You added so many good pieces from the transfer portal. You have a really good recruiting class coming in. Yeah, I know you don't have the PJ Morlandos or the Carson Messinas, and you don't have Cole Messina returning or guys like that. And I know you're losing some guys, but honestly, like this team, it's going to be a different look than anything we ever really saw under Mark Kingston. Like, yeah, I know there's a few returning pieces, and it's key returning pieces. Ethan Petrie, Kennedy Jones, Matthew Becker, guys like that. And I know there's more on this team. I mean, there's Blake Jackson. There's a lot of guys that are returning for South Carolina. And then you also have a lot of new guys coming in that are going to fill some of the voids that maybe that South Carolina just wasn't good enough in last year at certain positions. I think they're going to be better this year. And I mean, right now, I'm feeling pretty good about where this team's at. Obviously, with the SEC schedule, I think South Carolina is in a good position. And I mean, look, let's break down the schedule real quick because I'm really excited about it. You get Oklahoma at home to start off SEC play. Then you go to Arkansas. You're back at home to face the national champs with Tennessee. That's a really big turning point type of series, in my opinion, because I expect Tennessee to still be really good. As long as they got Tony Vitello, never count out the Vols, and they're coming into Columbia this year. So that's going to be a really big early season, early SEC play test because it's in March, and then you go on the road for 2 straight weekends. You're in Starkville against Mississippi State, and then you're at Texas A&M, which again, it's all pivotal. I mean, honestly, the SEC play is going to be a gauntlet as it usually is because every team in the SEC is really solid. And so I think if South Carolina gets through this, maybe like 17-13, maybe 18-12, honestly, like that would be fantastic. And then you get Ole Miss at home, you're at Kentucky, and then the final month of the regular season, home versus Florida, at Auburn, and then this is the big one. You end the regular season at home against Paul Maneri's former team, who he won the national championship with in 2009, the LSU Tigers, May 15th through 17th. I knew they were going to be playing LSU this year. I just had no idea when. It's so funny that this is the final series of the regular season for South Carolina. So I think they have a tough SEC slate. Just looking at it from what I know about these teams, but again, it's always tough. And honestly, like teams like Auburn, I think was dead last in the SEC last year. Um, Arkansas, I think they're beatable. I know it's in Fayetteville, but it's early in SEC play. I think they're beatable. Tennessee, I think you're catching them at a good time to where it's in Columbia and it's also like it's not in Knoxville and it's not late in the season. Like last year, I think that was the last SEC series of the year for South Carolina. And we know how Tennessee is ramping up right before the postseason started. And then you're in Starkville, and I mean, I feel like if you can go 3-3 or 4-2, I feel like you should be feeling pretty good about those series. They're going to probably lose a series or two somewhere along the way. It wouldn't surprise me if it's like Arkansas or maybe like Kentucky or Auburn. But like honestly, I think South Carolina has a favorable draw, so I think where they can definitely, like I said, go 17-13 or better. So I'm really excited about the season, and I do think they're getting to a regional to make a long answer a short one. And I think that honestly, I think they got the team to go to Omaha. That's just my opinion. We'll see how far they go from there. And actually, this is a funny question. Yeah, Washington Cock asks his final question: will our Yardcocks make it to Omaha in the next 3 years? I think South Carolina is definitely getting Omaha in the next 3 years. If you don't get to Omaha within 3 years, what did you bring Pulmonary in for? That's just my opinion. I think it may not happen in year one. Personally, I think it will. And I just think if it doesn't happen this year, if they get to a super, it's like, okay, you saw how close you got. Now it's time to make the adjustments needed to get to Omaha. And I do think under his leadership, I mean, he's got a 1 year plan. I mean, it's to get to Omaha this year. So if they don't, I don't know what's going to happen next. You assume he's here for the length of his contract, which is 5 years. But I definitely do think with him, they're going to get to Omaha. I think they're getting to the College World Series. Not sure if they'll ever win one under him, but just getting back there is a big accomplishment in and of itself because it's so hard to win in college baseball with how good mainly everyone is, specifically in the Southeastern Conference. Next question comes from True Check, who says, I got one for you there, Jack. Please do a segment on the value of fair reporting and not trying to protect yourself by blaming everything but what you said. This is kind of in reference to, he said, True Check says it's about the KSR podcast from a few days ago. Also, could you find out if they even graduated from UK, and if so, that says a lot about their journalism program. All right, so this is kind of a question that I'll answer as much as I can. Look, I don't listen to KSR. I don't really listen to I listen to some podcasts, but honestly, like I don't really. I mean, no disrespect to anyone from those guys. I mean, KSR, they are super nice, and any interactions I've had with them, they've been awesome to me. So I got no complaints about them. But I just don't feel the need to listen to a Kentucky podcast that I don't really care about, honestly. I'm sure they do great work over there. And look, if I've heard some about, here's the thing with me, I'm focused on what we're doing at Gamecock Central and how we can make this website continue to grow as if it's not already big enough. Keep it going and make it as good as possible. And that's really my focus. And as a journalist, I've always been taught ever since I was in high school. You need to be fair. You need to be objective, and you can't just be one sided. And I think while I did graduate from USC, I went to South Carolina, all that stuff. I don't lose sleep over whether or not South Carolina wins or loses. I don't sure. Do I want the Gamecocks to win? Absolutely. That'd be awesome. It makes my job a lot better because I like covering a winning team. And at the same time, it's fine if they lose. Like, it's really not the end of the world. I mean, we saw what happened with South Carolina baseball this past year, and a lot of people were still interested in reading our work and videos and all that stuff with Mark Kingston getting fired. So it's not. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do my job the same way, and I hope you guys still tune in to read my work, listen to what I have to say, all that stuff. But I will say, if you're going to, make a statement or something, you got to be able to wear it on your chin. I don't know what has been said. I don't know what's not been said. But I have a lot of respect for those guys over at KSR, and I believe they do a good job, and I think we do a great job as well. And honestly, everyone in the On3 network, I think we all do really good work, and I'm super fortunate to be able to work for a great organization like On3. So at the end of the day, it's really up to you with how you want to be as a journalist. I mean, you can it is a fan site after all. Keep that in mind. If you want to be a fan, that's cool. I don't really care. If you want to be a legit reporter, that's awesome too. And at the end of the day, there's different ways to go about it, and it's up to everyone how they want to do it. So that said, I'm gonna do me and focus on what we've got going on at Gamecock Central. And our final question comes from G.A. Cock, who says, in your opinion, what is it going to take to beat LSU? Do we have enough, quote, bullets in the gun, end quote, to get the job done? I think South Carolina, it's going to take a lot to win this game. For one, here's the way I look at it. You have to win the battle up front. You have Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard coming off the edge against LSU's insanely good offensive tackles. How do you get around them? It's tough because they haven't allowed a sack yet this year. I just think it's going to be a really fascinating part of the game to look at and see if Stewart and Kennard, they really haven't had much issue getting to the quarterback so far yet this year. They've been great. I mean, Dylan Stewart is unbelievable. Tomorrow he's turning 19 years old, I think. And that's going to be crazy to see if he can go off on his birthday. Wouldn't that be something? But that said, LSU's been really good up front, and pass pro, they're pretty solid. And Garrett Nussmeier, when he's given the space and pocket to throw, he's taking advantage. I mean, this is a guy that throws for over 300 yards a game so far this year. And so he's got Kyron Lacey on the outside, Aaron Anderson, guys like that. So they have a really good offense. Their run game stinks, in my opinion. I don't think it's that good. John Emery was their lead back, and now he's out for the season with a torn ACL. So it'll be interesting to see if LSU comes out and runs the football tomorrow. But I definitely do think if South Carolina can start forcing a little bit of pressure in the backfield, I'm not saying they're getting like 3-4 sacks or anything like that, but if you get 1 to 2 to 3, maybe, I think you can really start to, at the worst, force some bad throws from Nussmeier, get in his face a little bit, and force him maybe throw an interception or two. Because again, he hasn't been sacked at all yet this year, and he hasn't forced many turnovers. So you hope you can force him to have maybe 1 to 2. Two turnovers would be ideal. So I think that's definitely step number one. Offensively speaking, you got to be able to run the football. I think I'm not talking about Lenore Sellers running the football per se, but more so like, okay, Rocket Sanders has been good so far, but when are we going to see great Rocket Sanders? Like plus 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, really nice runs, that sort of thing. I think the first game of the year against Old Dominion, he had some nice breakout runs, and he was really solid, honestly, in that game. Scored a touchdown, was pretty good. Had I think almost 90 yards in that game. Last week against Kentucky, the numbers weren't as good, but he had 54 yards. He had a touchdown, and he had some really good runs in that second half. And I think the big thing with him is it's not he can create plays on his own. Like he doesn't need he obviously the blocking up front would be really helpful, but like for instance, there was a 3rd and 1 play last week where all he had to do was really just go over the top and get a first down. Instead, he cuts to the outside. A few blockers are chasing him. They can't get him. And he nearly scored a 21-yard touchdown. So it's stuff like that where if he does things like that, he's going to have a really nice day. And if you get him some holes up front, just like he kind of did in week 1, we're talking about 100 yards easily. I think he's going to have a big day tomorrow against LSU. And then Lenore Sellers is the other key. I mean, what kind of quarterback is he going to be? Is he going to be the one from Old Dominion week where he's missing on some of his throws and his receivers just aren't in sync? Or is it going to be like last week where they're getting open and he's on the money with his throws? I think if he can do what he did last week with a little bit more, it's not going to take much, but if he's as accurate and precise as he was last week with his throws, and he's a little more careful with the ball, and honestly, the protection's a little better up front. I know it sounds like a lot, but I think that's how South Carolina wins this game. Just do what you did last week, and it doesn't have to be as good, but you got to be playing consistent. And if you play consistent, I think you can win. I think this is a weird year for LSU where obviously they've already lost a game. They seem to really struggle in season openers. On the road, it's going to be tough. College game days in town. It wouldn't shock me if LSU won this game by any means because I think they're just a more talented team. However, I think this is the year for South Carolina. I'm not saying like national championship or anything. I'm just talking about in general. Like, okay, the spotlight's on them. I think they're going to take advantage of it, and I think they're really going to do some good on Saturday. And I do think, to answer the question, they have enough bullets in the gun to make this a win. But they're gonna have to play for 4 quarters, and they're gonna have to play really well. So we'll see what happens. That game kicks off at noon on ABC, and before that, College Game Day will be at Gamecock Park from 9 to 12, or I should say 9 to 11, because the game day crew will be moving inside the Williams-Brice Stadium roughly around 11 a.m. Dawn Staley, head women's basketball coach, multiple-time national champion, is going to be the guest picker on College Game Day at around 11:40 till the end of the show on Saturday. Then it's game time. So that is going to do it for this week's episode of Jack's Mailbag. Again, if you have any questions you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop a comment in the comment section below on this YouTube video, or I'll post on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com next week, where you can ask any and all your questions that you may have for me. That's going to do it for now, and have a wonderful and safe weekend, guys. If you guys are going to the game, be there, be loud. I'm really hoping it's a good atmosphere. I think the weather, honestly, is going to hold up and be pretty good. But even if not, even if it rains a little bit, stick it out. If you don't get many opportunities like this at South Carolina to have College Game Day come, be in the national spotlight, and have a chance to relish in it. I mean, think about it. This is a huge recruiting weekend, too, for South Carolina. And I know I just said the video is about over, but this is a massive recruiting weekend for South Carolina, too. I mean, if they get a win here, it's like, Shane Beamer's talked about it. There's been so many recruits wanting to come to this game and stuff. And if you show them a good environment, you're helping mortgage the future of this program. And I think there's a lot of upside to South Carolina coming out of here with a victory tomorrow, because it really starts to put you on the map a little bit. So we'll have to see what happens. But again, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Again, if you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, like I said, drop in the comment section below on this YouTube video, or wait till next week when I have a post on the Insiders Forum where you can ask any and all of your questions that you do have Stay safe, guys, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.